Hi everyone, happy Monday. I hope you're doing very well. No, I'm still not back at the States. I'm still in Europe, and even though I am blessed to be here, it is extremely, extremely hot, but nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, I thought I'd just do a 10 to 15 minutes video because I got so many requests privately and online for one regarding what is some are referring to as the Islamic NATO. No, but we're going to discuss that plus a few other things. But before I do, let me just say two things. Number one, thank you so much for signing up and for joining and subscribing. And thank you for your comments. I really encourage that. I want for people to give me, let me know of their opinion and give me their thoughts and ideas. And I want to thank every single one of you for, let me know what you're thinking. We may not always agree, but nonetheless, I appreciate it because I think that's the only way people will know what others are thinking to a lovely discussion. The second thing is regarding the classes that I'm teaching. Yes, tomorrow is the last one, but the classes that I am teaching starting, it's going to be like the first week of September. I will know, I will provide the information on that next week. I should say end of this week, but this one, it's going to be a hybrid because I have my traditional class in Miami. So it's going to be a little bit different, a little bit more crazier than usual. And again, unfortunately, because it's a hybrid class and it's my traditional students, I'm only going to have less than 10 individuals outside of my traditional classroom for those who want to join from Substack. So, but I'll let you know all about it. And I thank you so much for being so interested. So, hey, let's see what's going on. We turned out about 2 days ago, I should say yesterday, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, and Turkey came up and said, we have a joint defense program, and this is an incredible thing, right? And everybody was screaming, Islamic NATO, Islamic NATO, Islamic NATO. And I'm like, no, you all, this ain't no Islamic NATO. Heck, it's not even an Islamic organization military concept, right? What I've referred to as AIR, which is Ankara, excuse me, obviously Riyadh and Islamabad air, Ankara, Islamabad, Riyadh. These wonderful three groups have gotten together and they have attempted to create this source of an organization that in many ways will give them more status that actually they have or they wish to present, right? In this case, every single one of them have decided to join this for their own interest. But before I tell you what those interests are, you must realize that the trio are not a military entity. These three are not going to go to war for another country. And no, this is not a Sunni bloc versus the Shiite bloc of Iran. What we are seeing, it is, however, a signal to the end of the hegemonic American power, something that, thanks to the Iranians and their allies, China and Russia, known as the Syria Alliance, Chinese, Iranian, Russian Alliance, implemented. And as I've been saying for a number of years now. And so, what is this trio, what I refer to as AIR? These three got together and said, we are going to have economic agreement. We're going to make sure we're united. But when they said it's like NATO, one for all and all for one, oh no, that's not that. And the reason it's not that is because, well, first of all, they had something similar signed last year, if you recall, among the Gulf countries, and nobody helped another one. None of them decided to unite to go to war with Iran. As a matter of fact, Saudi Arabia and Pakistan have already have an agreement, right? You have, I think, about 10,000 Pakistani soldiers, sort of like in Pakistan. They were at the bases, which is Americans were hit, if you recall, right? And when MBS of Saudi Arabia asked pretty much of Pakistan Prime Minister says, hey, why aren't you defending me? They were like, bro, I didn't come to get killed, right? I'm just going to defend economic. And so every single one of them have a different reason for coming in, but it is not a military system that if, Saudi Arabia is attacked, Turks will come in and defend them because if anybody knows the history of Turks and the Arabs, that's never going to happen, particularly at the moment. So, in the case of Turkey, they basically joined for two reasons. They realized they have fallen behind the Chinese, Iranian, Russian alliance. Everybody in the Islamic world is looking towards Iran, the great Ottoman Empire, who sided with the Israelis, who sided with the Europeans over the Palestinians. They need to come in. They need to show up Arab status. We're still here. But it's a little bit more than that. It is also, ka-ching, 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 a military one in which they could sell their armaments, I should say, to the Saudis, give them a sense of, hey, I'm protecting you, but they're not doing that. They're not about, no Turk is about to go to war with Iran, for the lack of a better term, for the sake of the Saudis, right? In the case of Pakistanis, it's the same thing. Yes, they have an economic agreement with them. Yes, they have military, but they're not going to go to war, not just because 30% of the population is Shiites, but because, ladies and gentlemen, Pakistan is part of the Chinese led Asiatic Islamic order. And that is not just political, but also financial. Remember, what I believe it's about $60 billion worth of 600 some goes higher, $600 billion worth of investment by China, whether it's their ports in Pakistan or whether it's the Chinese, Iranian, Pakistani railroad, that they are interconnected together. As a matter of fact, that's being used now. They're part of the Chinese economic development. And even though the Saudis are, in some ways, are part of that development does not allow an economic signature to be used as a military tool. So they're part of that whole Chinese Iranian Islamic region that's taking over the Middle East. As a matter of fact, one of the reasons Iran went to Pakistan and said, hey, bro, come on in. Let's deal with it. The Americans, you could be the one. It's because the intention of Iran and China and Russia is to implement not just an Asiatic, but in Asiatic Islamic countries. It's no longer the Arabs, but rather Islamic Asiatic. So this is not an Islamic NATO. They're in it for the prestige. Wow, we made a deal with the Americans. We're here now with, we have a contract here and economic development. But they're part of the China train set, not necessarily the Western train set. So they're not about to go to war for any country. And for MBS, it's the last breath, right? We have talked about how the covenant has been broken between MBS and members of the tribes, how whether it's the Hawitad, whether it's the Shamar, whether it's the Utaya, whether it's the Harp, there was this incredible thousands of years, for the lack of a better term, covenant which provided economic military support from the king to the tribes. In return, the tribes would have complete support. That has broken with MBS. And so this is sort of like MBS's last step by saying, I have the Sunnis, I'm okay. The Americans are leaving, I'm going to remain in power. But this is really too late for MBS, not the House of Saud. It's the last breath of MBS. Will it work to keep him maintaining his position? Not really, unless something dramatic happens. At the moment, he's really, as it's clear, as soon as the father goes, he'd be lucky if he stands 5 months before he is replaced, as of now, because the covenant has been broken. So there is no, to make the long story short, there is no Islamic NATO. These nations are not there to go to war with one another. What it is, however, like I said, are two things. One, which is basically a signal to the end of Western hegemonic-led order in this region. It is a clear sign between the Chinese, Iranian, Russian alliance, which is zero, between Pakistani, Iranian, Chinese alliance, between air, that the American Western hegemony is gone. We are leaving the Middle East. What has defined Middle East, perhaps for several centuries, particularly for the past 6 decades, it's done. It's over. It's an Asiatic, global, Islamic-led order. It has arrived. The pendulum of power has shifted. And the other thing is, which is exceptionally important, it is the fact that is Asiatic Islamic-led order. This, what you see today, ladies and gentlemen, it's really one of the last attempts, for the lack of a better term, before you see everything from the Western hegemonic system going down. When you take a look at what's happening in Jordan, but the tribes have also spoken against King Abdullah, and especially last week when they sent 400 scholars, and all these leaders were saying, you need to kick out the Americans, and you probably have to go as well with it. You have the crisis in Bahrain, that basically the king, for the lack of a better term, of Bahrain has a rented army, doesn't have his own people. He tried to eliminate the country that's 70% Shiite. It's barely hanging on by a thread. You have the crisis in Kuwait, and you have the redrawing of the maps, literally, what you're beginning to see, ladies and gentlemen, it's the end of the Middle East as you know it, and the arrival of Islamic Asiatic order. I like to sometimes to compare it to the Abbasid dynasty of 8th century, along with the dynasty of China, in which they were fought. But even though both initially fighting, but they united is that they created a trade agreement in which eventually would create centuries of economic development for all and the golden age of Islam under the Persian dynasty. So if somebody's telling you, my gosh, it's Islamic NATO, move on. Just one more thing I'd like to add to that as well is that I want the ladies and gentlemen who are watching this, keep an eye on Jordan, keep an eye on Bahrain as well, because if you are reading non-traditional Western press, certainly, particularly from the Global South, from Asiatic world, you are beginning to see the shift that is happening. So I just want to give you a little bit heads up what's going on. I am writing an article in greater detail. The article will explain what is going on, how things have changed, and how the new Asiatic global order has arrived. And some of you have asked me before, can we get more information? If you like, my previous writings are there. So you can just take a look, let me know what you think, and just ask whatever you need. So thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. I hope this answered some of your questions. I tried to make it as simple as possible. I know this is Middle East and it's extremely complicated, particularly when you are bringing all the tribes in, when you're bringing the shift of the new power structure in there. So I wish you a wonderful Monday and let me know what you all think. Thank you so much.